Combat is your art, and mastering the medium is essential to becoming an Absolver. Upon arriving in Adal, all prospects have a core combat style and an initial combat deck. On their path to absolution, prospects will learn new possibilities and mix them to create their own unique method of fighting. One of 3 combat styles are chosen at the beginning of your journey, but other styles exist in the world of Absolver. Each combat style improves specific character attributes and comes with its own unique special ability. Balanced and powerful, with the Forsaken style, prospects can parry enemy attacks, briefly stunning their opponent. Strong and resistant, practitioners of the cult method can absorb hits without being stunned or pushed back, and regain lost health if the counterattack is successful. The students of the Windfall combat style will have greater dexterity and will. They can avoid enemy attacks, leaving their enemies open to a powerful counter. The combat deck is the list of attacks that a prospect can use when fighting. These attacks are divided between 4 different stances, which represent the prospect's orientation relative to their target. In each stance, different attacks are available. Some attacks will naturally flow from one stance to another. Other attacks will stay in the same stance. Regardless, each move will always chain fluidly with one another, effortlessly shifting from stance to stance without interruption. The combat deck is fully customizable, allowing one to define their way of fighting and become unpredictable. In each of the 4 stances, prospects will choose a sequence of attacks and an alternative attack. Alternative attacks can be used at any time to break a sequence and bring the prospect in another stance. Both sequences and alternative attacks can be chained fluidly without interruption. To give more possibilities, new attacks can be unlocked by fighting against any kind of opponent, from the newest prospect to the strongest Absolver. Besides this, prospects can learn other combat styles by choosing a mentor and staying loyal to him or her. Prospects can choose mentors as they meet in the world. Through their loyalty, prospects can learn additional combat styles and use their mentor's combat deck. Steel yourself, dear prospect. Combat instincts may come natural, but refining your combat style and combat deck is key to both basic survival and victory in the lost lands of Adal.
Game with a focus on a very unique but accessible melee combat system. So the combat in Absolver is inspired by actual martial arts, and we wanted to create a system that was deep but accessible, and in which players could create their own custom combat choreographies. What we're seeing here is a tutorial map in the game. It's very early stage. The player has not been matchmaked with other players yet. The main part of the game is set in a small open world that is made of a dozen interconnected zones that the players can explore freely, and in which he or she is matchmaked with other players seamlessly. So as you explore the world, you will get to meet other people and build relationships with them. You can make friends, enemies, you can find mentors or students. A variety of relationships exist. And as we see here, sometimes you'll be walking in the world and suddenly somebody else is there. This, however, is a single-player tutorial because it's there to teach the player the basic game mechanics. So we wanted to do a combat system that is pretty accessible, so it's easy to pick up and play. It's a 3D real-time combat system, but we added enough layers of depth, as we'll see, to have an actual competitive PvP experience. Because the endgame of Absolver is becoming the best Absolver and fighting others like you in PvP. So here we see that the special defense of that character. In Absolver, every player can choose a combat style, and each style has a different special ability. This combat style has the parry ability, so the character is able to parry attacks if he does it in the right timing, which I kind of messed up here, but we'll see it a bit later on. So that's one mechanic. Another, which we saw earlier, is what we call perfect attacks. So when you nail your attacks, your successive attacks in the right timing, the character will flash golden, which makes the attacks chain faster and stun the enemy a bit longer. So that's what we're seeing here. It's really an incentive to be in the flow of combat. Another game mechanic we're seeing here is the feint, which is cancelling the build-up of an attack to trick your opponent into doing a feint. So that's this black ghost we can see at times. So this is especially useful against human opponents. Once you feint, you get into this high-level mind game, kind of tricking your opponent into doing a dodge or a parry, and that allows you to follow up really quickly with another attack while your enemy is recovering. So that's once you kind of get to know the attacks of your opponent, that is something that is very important to tackle. So now we're going to see something that is really the core of Absolver, which is the stances and the combat deck edition. The idea is, in Absolver you have 4 different stances, represented by this diamond. In each stance you have a sequence of up to 3 attacks, which you see on top, an alternative attack, which you see down. The idea is that every stance starts in one stance and goes into another one. So for instance, here we're going to make a sequence of attack that starts front left and that finishes front left. I can go into training mode. I'm going to see that if I chain these moves and I keep attacking, they loop on themselves. But I could go ahead and change that and decide that one stance actually goes to a different stance. Here, my 2 front stances both loop on themselves. But the idea is that any attack always chains smoothly with the attacks that follow. So everything is fluid, everything is dynamic, and the action basically never stops. The same system works with weapons, so the player can pull out weapons as temporary bonuses, and when you take out a weapon, it's just a whole different combat deck that is now accessible to you. Weapons do more damages, but they can be temporarily disarmed. They can bonuses. You can get disarmed, as we just saw here. So pulling a weapon in combat usually gives an advantage to the player, but can also be dangerous if your enemy gets very offensive, disarms you, and picks up your weapon. So now we're going to see another part of the game, which is a bit later. We're changing characters, and we're going to focus now on the attack learning system, which is the core of how you will create your characters in Absolver. So in Absolver, as you explore the game world, you'll meet other enemies, whether they're NPCs or players. And when you fight somebody, whether it's an NPC or player, they attack you with an attack that you don't know. You will learn that attack progressively, which is what we're seeing here. Here I'm using the Absorb ability, which allows me to avoid being stunned or pushed back by an attack, and that allows me to counterattack right away. So I do receive damages, but if I counterattack, my damages are mitigated. And when I use my special ability on an attack, I'm going to learn it faster. So here I see that I've learned a bit out of 6 attacks, and as you fight different enemies, you will progressively learn more and more attacks. And what you want to do is, sometimes you don't want to beat an NPC right away, but rather try and use your special ability tactically on that NPC in order to learn their moves better. Another mechanic this ties on is a social relationship with mentor students. So what you can do when you meet another player is ask them to become your mentor. That way, that player will be able to teach you their combat style, and you'll be able to learn attacks faster than you would by fighting regular enemies. So here I'm trying to absorb the enemy's attack, not to kill it right away. There we go. I've learned some of 3 different attacks. Now this character here seems a bit more dangerous, so I guess I'm gonna be careful in the early stages of combat. Valid tactic is to kind of get to know the moves of your opponents. That way you'll be able to counter the opponent more efficiently. This enemy has a combat style that has avoid as special ability. So my enemy can sidestep, duck under my attacks. He cannot parry or absorb, but he can certainly make these very short and fluid avoidance moves that allows them to follow up really fast and attack me. Every time my attack is a bit too predictable, the enemy ducks under it. So I've got to be careful here, maybe get some feints in order to get the edge in combat. Here I'm taking another stance, my back stance. I know that I have a low attack that allows me to beat that enemy. The enemy hasn't picked up my sword, so I can go ahead, pick up that sword. My health is pretty low, so I'm gonna heal up and keep on exploring that zone. So we're not going to show too much of that zone here, but before we jump to PvP, we wanted to show a bit of the customization system of Absolver. The general principle is that every gear, every piece of equipment, and we've got 9 different equipment categories in Absolver, every piece of equipment has specific parameters of weight and protection. And so you're kind of making that trade-off between weight that slows you down and protection that gives you, mitigates damages, and sometimes gear protects you better against blunt damage. Sometimes gear protects you better against cut damage, which is typically the damage that players get from weapons. So you're making these trade-offs as you equip, and all these equipment categories are fully compatible. So you're making gameplay choices as well as aesthetic choice, because the look of your character pretty much determines how others will perceive you. And so it's important in an online game to kind of create your persona and show others what your character represents. Okay, so now what we're going to see is some player versus player combat. What's important to note is there are 2 forms of PvP combat in the game. Either what we're seeing here, which is players being matchmade together in the world, and these players have decided to fight, but these players could actually have teamed up and go on into co-op PvE instead of fighting. But they chose to fight, and so here they are fighting. So we're going to see different moments of a variety of fights and look at the tactics involved. So this was an earthquake tower. What we can see are the floating shards in the back of the characters allow them to use special weapons and powers. So you need shards to pull out your weapon, but you can also use a shard to create a shockwave or other thing. So when confronted with an enemy who is a weapon, the good tactic is to be very effective in order to try and disarm him, but that's not always possible. So we have 2 categories of weapons. This here are the war gloves. The character can change on the fly between war gloves and swords, and as you can see, he can also get disarmed again, and my opponent can pick up his weapon. As we saw previously, it's very important to stay focused and keep these perfect attacks that make your character flesh golden, because that's how you get the faster edge in combat. Even though the moves that can be placed in the combat deck all belong to different combat styles, characters can choose to put in their combat deck moves of any style. So you can create something which is a mixed style based on different attacks. Some attacks also have different properties. These attacks that turn you blue can absorb attacks. Some attacks can avoid. Some attacks can interrupt. That was nice parry done here, followed by a guard break attack. This is a guard break attack again. We see the character's hand flashing red, and he disarms. He can pick up his war gloves, absorbing a few attacks, and then jumping right in. But the other enemy has pulled out a weapon, and so the odds have shifted again. This is a Moonpike sword. It's a very fragile sword, so it can break pretty easily, but it inflicts heavy cut damage. But the opponent has pushed me back with a shockwave. Here we see a good use of the absorb power. Sometimes the fight takes place near cliffs or precipice, and this creates a combat modifier because you cannot dodge in that direction. Some PvP maps exclusively focus on these dangerous environments in which players may fall. That was a weapon break, followed up by that big absorb haymaker punch. That finishes up the enemy. So even if an enemy is dominating, as we can see here, if with a succession of absorbs, you can always chain your attacks faster, and if the enemy makes just one mistake, you can always follow up and pick up in combat. The altar here is red because characters cannot interact with an altar when a fight is going on. And there we go. Weapon is picked up, and now the odds have shifted. It's very important to be able to use your special ability in the right timing. This is a move inspired by Capoeira. It's a very powerful kick. He pushes me away, so this will finish it that way. So what we see here are combats that take place in the worlds. But, as mentioned previously, fun combats take place into dedicated PvP arenas. So, from the game world, the player will be able to access special PvP game modes. So there is of course the 1 versus 1 duel, which currently is a best of 5 mechanic, but there is also 3 versus 3 game modes. And this concludes our demo. Thanks for watching.
Oh, it's
I'm just
really
trying to figure this out.
Well, actually,
Zeke, I got
there's
questions.
stuff like, going into co-op, making enemies. Some dudes are gonna attack you.
It's more like
Eventually,
Mori.
you'll be able to trade. I can actually walk up to you and ask you to become my mentor, because
Really?
I know that I see that you know Kung Fu and I don't. So you're gonna be able to teach me Kung Fu, teach me your moves. So the mentor-student is one of the main relationships we have in the game.
But how do they teach the moves to each other?
Yeah, no kidding.
That's basically when you fight, it all feeds in our combat deck mechanic, which we'll see a bit later on. When you fight an enemy and they attack you with an attack that you haven't discovered yet, that you don't know yet, you're gonna learn it progressively. And so if I like parry that attack, you see that little icon with the attack that's being played, it means I don't know that attack and I'm learning it. And so eventually you learn these attacks and you're able to use them in what we call the combat deck, which is an interface that's used to create your combos. And when you have a mentor, they can teach you much faster these attacks that they know. And it's also the only way. You start with a specific combat style. That combat style here is what we call Windfall. It's like Kung Fu inspired. It's got a special ability, which is the Avoid. So you start with a combat style. If you want to learn other ones, you need a mentor. So that what we're seeing here is a mechanic that we call perfect attacks. Basically, it's really important in the game to chain attacks in the right timing. So if you attack at the right moment, if you're in the flow, you'll chain attacks faster. It's a bit kind of like the active reload mechanic in Gears of War. And it's always there in combat, so you really need to stay focused even if the action is intense, basically.
And you gotta pay attention because you do have a stamina bar. Yeah,
so the stamina bar is kind of is both your stamina for attacks, for dodges, for special moves, and your guard gauge. So when you're out of stamina, your guard is going to be broken pretty fast. So we just saw here the special ability of that combat style, which is the Avoid. So you can avoid low, you can duck under high attacks, jump over low attacks, and sidestep over a vertical or thrust attack. So you really have to read the direction of the attack of your opponent to kind of use your special defense and gain the upper edge, because when you successfully avoid, it'll slow down your opponent. So we're just opening up a little shortcut here so that if ever we die, we can go back there faster.
So before, when they were fighting, there was a little icon showing like a kick and like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that means that you're learning that attack. That means that your enemy has hit you with an attack that you haven't fully learned yet.
Oh, there we go.
And so when there's just a little plus, it means you've just discovered it. And once you've discovered it, you'll see that little gauge filling up around the circle. It means you're learning it.
Okay.
And if you like successfully parry an attack, you'll learn more of it than if you just get hit by it.
Right. Okay. So you can just sit there and get punched in the face a few times, but it takes longer. But you'll eventually go, oh, punch in the face move. I got it.
Actually, when you're fighting, it applies for both NPCs and other players you meet. And when you fight NPCs in the world, you don't want to just beat them up. You want to get these parries and get this special ability in so that you learn their attacks, faster.
When you see someone, when you come upon someone in the world, there's no indication of who they are and what they know, right?
Well, we're actually working on the whole social wheel aspect and what level of information we're giving you as to what the level of this guy is. What progression, there's an RPG progression system in the game, and so you invest point in different stats which impact basically your playstyle. So this is a build that's currently playable at PAX, and this is what we call an altar. It's a place where you can meditate to improve your stats and build your combat deck. We are, however, going to see the combat deck in a while. So the basic of the combat is what we're seeing here. So that little diamond is our stances system. So you've got 4 stances to choose from, and depending on the stance you're in, you've got different attacks that are mapped to each stance and which you can customize in the combat deck. We'll see that in a second.
So you can do stances that are like super like and or stances that are just like
exactly. You can do heavy stances, light stances, or you can do stances that loop on themselves, or stances that
an element of stance dancing that you can do.
Oh yeah, very much so. And we actually have like these sweet little animations when you switch stances. It's like, and you actually
it's so fluid.
Yeah, well, the whole system is basically a stance is your orientation relatively to your opponent. So when you chain your attacks in your combat deck, the stances all match. Each attack starts in one stance, finishes in one stance. So basically, all the moves you do always match the orientation of your previous move. So it all chains basically together pretty fluidly, yeah. And we're going to see that in a second. So
no, it's really cool to see them change stances and to do like it's really flowy. You know, it's and then this.
Why are you laughing? That guy fell down. Oh, you're laughing at that. Yeah, no,
that guy fell down.
He fell down a hole. I might have got holes in it.
Slapstick comedy always works with GR.
I am simple. Does any of them do drunken monkey style?
That's an excellent question.
Okay. Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Yeah, it's an excellent question.
Do you want to bring the drunk monkey back out?
Yeah,
Get the monkey out there.
he's drunk now? Oh, man.
Life is hard for that red gorilla.
Poor red gorilla.
Dude.
Yeah, we'll see about monkeys and about drunkenness, but
Is that going to be a DLC?
We'll see. We'll see that.
It's so pretty.
This guy's he's just backed into a corner. Gave
Yeah,
up.
yeah. It's
How would you have fought? If you were the guy in the corner, what would you have done? Being you're an expert game developer, creator.
You don't want to get backed in the corner, so what you want to do is dodging on the side and always kind of manage the space around you.
Do you watch a lot of UFC to get ideas for this?
You know what? Our animators, they watch a lot of different martial arts. They've all practiced.
Right.
Wait,
they all practice?
No, all this is
okay.
keyframe, and actually all our animators have between like 8 and 12 years of martial arts experience.
Damn.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
If
They
we
can-
go to the Absolver booth,
Yeah.
and we're
And
like,
start a
I'm
fight.
just like, I hate this game. Everybody's
Yeah,
going to
it's
start
like,
doing this. And you're going to, that's not real. That's from a video game. And then you're going down.
No, and so everything is keyframe. They watch a lot of references, and you know, some of which come from
What's
mixed
the
martial arts
quickest
parts.
novice move you could show me right now with
Quickest
one
what?
hand? Fastest one-hand
I
takedown.
mean, can I kill JM?
Yeah,
with
how
my
can you
thumb?
kill JM right
It's in
now
my
with
Well, I
one
think
move?
you know, I'll go for the
That's
throat
dude.
right away.
See,
right
you knew
away.
exactly
Yeah.
what he was
Chop.
doing.
Yeah.
One
Yep.
chop.
Yeah, I think the throats.
No, mine's 2 moves. It's pocket, pepper spray.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's my move right
I thought you
there.
were gonna be turn around, run away.
Run away.
That was your move.
No, I was talking about being back
actually,
against
this is what we were mentioning earlier, which is the combat deck. So basically, we're kind of
Speeding through
it, but all attacks have different damage, speed, range, tracking properties, and some of them have actually special properties. They can guard break, they can avoid. So you really like kind of build your own playstyle in that interface. And
So you're making your own combos?
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Pretty much.
That's now that of anything that you mentioned so far, that is pretty badass. Like, because usually you buy combos like now you can do the spin kick punch move.
No,
But now you're like you spin kick if you like the punch, or you could do throat chop or like that stuff.
And here we're in PvP, so it's a bit
So
more
there's
advanced
weapons
character. Yeah, you can pull out weapons. We've got 2 weapons families at this stage: war gloves and swords. They're like temporary bonuses in combat. You can use them. You see these little glowing stones? We call them tension shards. You got 5. This guy has a like kind of a magic focus build, so he's got 5 of them, and he can use them. In the bottom left, you've got special abilities and weapons, and he can use these special shards, which fill up during combat, for special abilities to take out weapons, etc. But his enemy actually right here was chaining these attacks pretty fast.
You know, I haven't seen this environment yet. Any of these environments, really.
No, you have not.
I've only seen that first brown city. You know, that little.
Yeah, we've been running a closed alpha this past week, and this was the closed alpha area.
This is amazing.
What's the deal with the mask? Why does everybody wear masks?
That's you'll have to play the game.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
man. I'm sorry.
It's eyes
I'm
wide
sorry.
shut.
Yeah.
No, it's all,
It's a
that's
sex
all right.
cult thing.
It's, yeah, it's
I don't mind
pretty much a
surprises.
sex cult thing.
It's a-
Yeah, that's it. And the idea is that when you pull a weapon out, you switch combat decks. So you switch to a sword combat dex, but it's still the same mechanic. Your attacks go from one stance to the other, flow together, and you still have parry, avoid abilities. So it's all
Did that guy just
And you're
lose his
controlling.
sword?
You're controlling.
Yeah, you
like,
can get disarmed. You can get disarmed, and your opponent can actually pick up your sword, which is what he's doing. Boom, boom, and like beat you up with
It's
his
so.
weapon.
The game's beautiful.
So
I
you're
just wanna-
controlling.
stability and order in that world, and but you start as a prospect, so you haven't been accepted in the order.
You're a scrub. You started as a scrub.
Yeah,
A pleb.
and you're going to face a series of trials to ensure that you're worthy of becoming an absolver.
Awesome. Okay, well, I know we have some gameplay footage here. What are we looking at? We're just starting the game from the beginning?
This is, we're showing here a quick demo of co-op gameplay, exploring the game world, and seeing the combat gameplay. So, for the purpose of this demo, we're selecting a pre-customized character, but the players will be able to customize their characters fully with plenty of different gears that you'll be looting throughout the game.
Absolutely. When I hit people, I want to be styling.
Of course,
course.
of course. And so now we're just gonna pick one pre-customized character and jump in that co-op demo.
So cool.
That's a 3-player kind of co-op that we have going.
Oh, nice.
We have it at we're showing it at E3 here.
Oh, great. So people can play this now?
Yeah, we'll have press and media coming out to play.
Awesome.
And I mean, the one thing that strikes me about this game, like initially right away, is the world and the style. It's like, what was the inspiration for that? Where did that come from?
That came from, we wanted to do a game that's with realistic body proportions, and but you know, this is a fantasy world, and we wanted it to take the player out of this world. You know, somebody somewhere that you've never been before. And so here you see on that bridge here you see one of the guides. Well, so there are this faction that took you to this place to monitor your progress and decide whether you're worthy of becoming an absolver. So you'll be we're fighting in co-op here, so you'll be playing. You can play the game by yourself or with co-op partners. And so this is the exploration part of the game, from which you can access actual game modes such as PvP and PvE game modes.
Nice.
I see that we're starting out with just fists. Does that mean I need to go collect my weapons
You
and
will
kind of upgrade
collect
myself?
weapons. And actually what you see here is that you see in the distance 2 people fighting. So as you move in the game world, as I was saying, you'll be encountering other players, and sometimes they're in the distance like these, and you can't meet up with them.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe a bit further down the road, you'll be able to join forces with them.
I like that
Very
you just
cool.
happen to run into people who are fighting to the death. Like, hey guys, I'm
Yeah, it
just gonna leave you be.
happens.
All right, cool.
Just passing by.
Yeah, cool.
It's a tough neighborhood.
I'm so glad just looking at this. The you know, just the melee combat is super compelling, because in video games, it's how people, like how humans were meant to fight, but we didn't get it right in video games until right now. It's like it's always so infuriating when games do not do punching correctly. Like that's all we've ever been doing, and it's
Right.
never compelling.
That's what struck us when we saw it. It was just like this smooth cinematic, like dodging, moving, and he can talk more about it, but the flow of the combat's amazing.
We
Yeah.
certainly have been focusing on getting these punches and kicks in.
Yeah.
Correct. You know, you get a real feeling of impact when your blows connect, and that was important for us.
What
So
goes
we're-
into that process for people who don't know what it's like to develop video games? Or is there something cool happening?
Yeah, this is a couple of things, game mechanics we want to talk about here.
Cool.
Which is what we call flowing attacks. So when you're just attacking regularly, you see a green stamina bar in the upper left corner. There's this little gauge filling up, and you need to actually hit your blows in the correct timing, as you see here, and so he turns golden. And so in this game you shouldn't button mash. You know, it's all about timing, execution. So even when you're in the
Real
middle
fighting.
in the middle of a battle under pressure, you gotta know your attacks, be in the good flow, and because these flowing attacks allow you to chain attacks faster, stun your enemy longer. Here we're seeing special ability, because every character can choose and learn a combat style. There's a variety of styles to choose from, and each style has a special ability. And so here we're seeing the special ability, which is a parry, and so you can execute either parry left or parry right, and that allows you to counter your opponents and stun them and get the advantage. So you got to read the attack, like here, parry left or parry right, and then you can get a couple of attacks in.
Yeah, I feel like that really adds complexity to, you know, a melee combat system's parrying, because like you could just smash each other in the face with fists, but that's not how real fighting works. You're going to dodge and deflect and turn the fight around.
Adds complexity is is that what you're seeing here is you're able to feint. And so once your opponent knows your attacks and start parrying each and every one of them, you can actually trigger an attack and cancel it and feint your attack. So that's what we're hearing here. So she's parrying me again, and so now I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna feint an attack, and then trick her into parrying or dodging the attack and get another attack in.
I learned that from my older brother. He would just
No, stop. That's exactly it. Like and you're like, oh, button
And
mash.
then you hit them. Yes.
Exactly. So here you see I've just parried a low attack, so you get the advantage when you start parrying.
And am I right now fighting against NPCs, or am I fighting other potential players?
So this is you with a co-op partner, and most of the people you're fighting here are NPCs, but you'll be encountering both NPCs and other players seamlessly as you
Like
progress in the world.
when you come up to a character, at first you're not necessarily sure if it was a player or an NPC, which is kind of cool.
Oh, neat, yeah.
Did you spend a lot of time into making sure the NPCs kind of fight like people would fight?
Oh yeah, it's well that's the AI design. It's a bit too long to go into depth here, but for sure it needs to be it needs to be interesting to fight NPCs. And
Yeah,
so they
absolutely.
get good reactions. If you faint, they're actually gonna try.
They
and parry.
react like a person would react. I
Very
mean, that
much
makes
so.
things so much more compelling.
Very much so.
I just saw you kind of charge yourself with this red energy. Was that your power?
That's items. So here we only have one item, which is in the top, bottom left corner, which is a regen item. You use it with these little stones that are glowing in your back, and these are tension shards. They charge up with the adrenaline of combat, and you can use that power to use items, magical items, powers, and stuff.
Wow. Very cool.
And so here we're encountering the
this guy's a
enemy.
badass.
Yeah, he's bigger. He hits pretty hard, and he's got a different style, and he's got a special ability which allows him to avoid attacks. So you can either duck to avoid low attacks, or jump to avoid attacks. Or actually, the other way around.
If you duck to avoid low attack,
Yeah, that's what I would do in the game.
Like, oh, sorry.
It's really cool. That's what I was saying earlier, though. You have this. It has this good cinematic feel to it. The flow is there. Like when people dodge and move. It's all smooth. It's the animation that Slow Clap has done is outstanding.
And so here, we're actually gonna see this this avoid from up close. Like, boom, he's avoided you. You see this ghost appearing, and well, 2 against 1. Friendly fire is on, as you can see.
Don't kick your friends
You can
in the
kick
face.
your friends in the neck.
Exactly.
I never learned that as a kid. I didn't have many friends.
And so I'm learning to counter different abilities of different
Exactly.
types of enemies.
And so here you're walking around in the world, and you happen to encounter another player, and so you don't know what's going to happen, but he tells me to come in. So okay, it's a fight. Let's fight. You know.
This guy obviously didn't see what you did to the other guy. He was like, this is gonna be easy. It's fine. I got this.
But you can trade. You can make friends. You don't necessarily have to fight with other players you meet. And this guy didn't make the good decision because it's 2 of us. It's only him. But well, he felt like attacking.
People have
so
been there
fine.
before. St. Patrick's Day. You know.
Just used the shockwave, and now he felt endangered, so he pulled the sword to try and get. So to answer,
Ooh, and how do I parry a sword if I don't have one?
well, your parry is a kind of magical parry, so you've got a
We're
magical
still talking
shield.
fiction here, okay? So.
No, that's great. I can buy magical parry. I'm totally into that.
And I love that you're always surprised with what new abilities or new weapons or whatever. So you think you know everything, and then you are hit in the face with a new foot or item. So
where we're gonna go in here is you're discovering a few attacks here, and until now we've seen the basic combat and to make it really fluid and accessible, but it's actually much deeper than that. And that what we're seeing here is our combat deck. So you've got 4 stances to choose from. So in real-time combat, you can get into 4 stances, and depending on each of these stances, you've got a sequence of up to 3 attacks and an alternative attack. And so here in the top left sequence, we only have unlocked 1 attack in the sequence because with progression, you progressively unlock different slots. So you progressively discover attacks. And so here, for the moment, you have 3 attacks in your sequences, which is a jab, a cross punch, and a back fist. So I'm going to go ahead and edit that last attack in the sequence and replace my last hit by a front kick.
There is so much to talk about in this game, and I feel like we could talk about it for hours and hours more, but unfortunately we only have about a minute.
This is the exploration part of the game where you are in it's a small open world. It's the ruins of a fallen city in which you're seamlessly matchmaked with other players as you explore. This current demo here we're seeing, it's the earliest part of the game, so it's a single player tutorial. and so we won't see any social relationships in here.
Okay.
So we've chosen a character with a specific combat style because in the game you can have different combat styles that you learn as you progress, and so this character has this combat style which is inspired by Kung Fu, and each combat style has a special ability. So this one you can avoid enemy attacks. So here we see core real-time combat gameplay against an NPC. So we wanted to make a combat system that's, one of our taglines was combat is a dance and movement is your weapon. So we wanted something that's really physical and strong and impactful.
How many different, I guess I'd say martial arts styles did you research and look into when you were putting this all together?
Quite a few. In the game, we're going to have 3 main combat styles plus 1 secret one that you can unlock in the game, which we're not discussing currently.
Okay.
That's a little surprise we're keeping for later on. And
that one just turns it into a first-person shooter, right?
Exactly. That's not the plan. And so as you're exploring, you'll be fighting NPCs. You'll be basically discovering what you're doing what it means to become an absolver, which is your main objective, and you'll come to question these objectives as you progress.
So you've got a really intricate combat system here, where you actually there's some predetermination going on here, where you have to decide, but outside of battle, you put things together. Right?
Exactly. The idea is that we wanted to let players build really their own unique playstyle. This is something that we're going to see a little further on in this demo. Just one thing we're going to see here is a core game mechanic, which we call flowing attacks. The idea is that you want to attack in the right timing to chain your attacks faster, to stun your enemy for longer. That's when you see the character flashing gold. And so that means that even in the full pressure of the action, you got to stay focused, you got to stay in the right rhythm to reach maximum efficiency.
That's cool. It feels almost like spiritual, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, well, we're trying to have something that's, not like bun mashy or frenetic, but we want it to be a pace which is still very intense, but you mustn't rush things. Must be, in accordance with your movement and the flow of your movements.
Cool.
And we just saw here the special ability of this character, which is the avoid. This is a quick tutorial that we're showing. And final thing is, you see these little 2 stones glowing in my back. It's this is what we call tension shards. They fill up during combat, and they allow you to use special powers, special abilities, and to draw weapons during combat. So weapons are like a temporary bonus that you can use when your tension shards are glowing. We're going to see weapons a bit further down the road.
Okay.
And so this, I'm not going to go too deep in the narrative of the game because it's the story blends single player and multiplayer. So you can run through the game without being connected, but you'll be missing on the social. Sure that the gameplay feels right even in real network conditions.
Cool. Yeah, this combat system is just so different than anything I've ever seen before. You guys are really, it feels like you're putting so much care into every frame of animation here.
Oh yeah, all the animations here are keyframed. We've got very talented animators in the team, and I think all of them have like extensive martial arts experience.
Oh.
And I think the one who did the least did like practice karate for like 6 or 7 years.
That's got to be a really small Venn diagram of skilled animators.
Core combat. So, that's what we haven't discussed it yet, but the idea is when you're in combat, anytime you can change stances by holding R2 and moving the right stick. So you've got 4 different stances to choose from, and depending on your stance, you've got one sequence of attack and an alternative attacks. And all these attacks can be customized in that interface, which we called the combat deck. So as you explore, as you meet people, as you fight other people, as you find mentors, you'll learn new attacks, which you can use in your combat deck.
Okay, so this is a deck as in like a card deck.
As in a card deck, but you're basically between combats, you're preparing your strategy and the moves that you'll be able to use in real-time combat.
Huh.
The idea is that one attack can send you in a different stance. So when I'm building a sequence of attack, it can either loop on itself or send me in a different stance.
Okay.
And all the moves chain together really smoothly.
So players basically build their own combat system.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that eventually players really have their unique setup and combat style, and you know, this is what you're doing in combat. It's learning what moves your opponent are to be able to react and counterattack, etc.
Huh. So is this kind of or the overall aesthetic?
Well, we wanted to do something which was stylized, but still had realistic human proportions, and we thought that, you know, it fits our gameplay, which is really about the essence of movement. So we didn't want to have too many things that distract you from that.
Okay.
But while still, you know, having enough details to have quite of a rich environment, and so. This is why, you know, we've got realistic shapes, but stylized textures, and animations are also a bit, you know, not exaggerated, but yeah, stylized, I guess, is for lack of a better word. So the idea is that, as you to show the character customization aspect of the game, so all your gear has impact on gameplay properties. So you've got weight ratios, defense parameters, which in turn impact how efficiently you're going to use the attacks that you've placed in your combat deck. Okay. And this is, for us, it's also important because this is what you'll be showing to others in game. And so if I choose a math like this one, which is maybe a bit aggressive, and you meet me, you're going to get a different impression. You're going to tell yourself a different story about, okay, this is probably a bad dude. He's going to try to attack me.
Is there a mask that's just a big smiley face so I can be very welcoming to people?
Feints, flowing attacks. There's a disarm mechanic, so here I've just picked the weapon of my opponent to hit him with it.
Oh, cool.
This was an avoid, which is one of the special abilities here.
And this is the match-made PvP that we're looking at?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So you can fight players in the game, but if you want to do like a best of 5 actual game mode, you're going to want to go into a dedicated PvP game mode.
Awesome.
So we've got 1 versus 1 game modes, and we've got 3 versus 3 more objective-based game modes.
Oh, cool.
So you'll be wanting to, you know, make friends in the game as you're exploring, build a team, and go into dedicated PvP game modes with them.